I'm not exactly sure how traditional media coverage can survive without adapting to what's happening in our social landscape. Some people in this country seem growingly hostile and resistant to objective reporting with facts and direct questions. And while I'll say American journalists aren't physically in peril as their counterparts are in Russia or Mexico or even France, I wouldn't assume that the threat of violence and suppression couldn't get more out of control if we're not careful of what's been happening. It blows my mind that adults treat conspiracy groups and social media as legitimate news sources. And I'm not referring to like a web link somebody posts that takes you to an article, to Washington Post or the New York Times. I've heard functioning tax-paying adults make wild claims or statements. And when I ask, like, hey, where'd you get this from? They said Facebook or QAnon or some other random person in some, I don't know, some extremist group calling themselves Patriots for America or something like that. So what I'm hoping for is that journalism and media coverage adapts to the changing times so it can withstand the disinformation and the distrust that seems to flood the marketplace. The number of content creators are only, in my opinion, going to grow. And people with extreme and batshit crazy opinions will continue to flood the various platforms like your YouTubes, your Twitters, and your TikToks. So there's even a dedicated platform for the right called Parler, and I can only imagine the bullshit that floods that platform. I think we can count on, a continuance of bad actors in both foreign and domestic to continue adding fuel to the fire by meddling and preying upon our division here in the US. Our foreign intelligence has been saying so for the last, I want to say 4 years especially. I personally don't really want to see traditional media go away. I think good, effective journalism matters in terms of broad and investigative reporting, but I would like to see some transformations in how media is covered and, how it's being presented to us as a consumer or as a viewer. Now, what I'm happy about and what I feel is working is that finally some of these network personalities and some of these anchors are cutting away from talking heads when they're telling outlandish lies and spreading falsehoods during a broadcast or otherwise. I like when journalists don't back down to obvious lies and misdirection. I just don't think there's quite enough of it. And with the exception of far-right outlets, whom I refuse to acknowledge, I cover a pretty broad spectrum of legitimate media coverage globally. Having said that, one thing the media industry has to keep in mind is that there is a big appetite for biased, insane, and information devoid of facts, riddled with conspiracy theories. It's a part of the blueprint that the populace use in keeping their brand strong and having direct channels where they can access political support or that kind of political support from citizens. So if truth and data and decency is to matter, we need to see more evolution and change from this industry. What I'm hoping for is that leadership with some of these media agencies or these networks and even content creators reflect on how we got to a place where misinformation was so effective in having so much influence and creating division and anger here in the US. I'm not sure what the answer is, but if I had to have my guess, one of the failures I would say was giving people like Donald Trump and his minions such a huge platform during the 2016 election. The insanity from the far right is and was pure fire. And I'm not talking about the good kind of fire either. I'm talking about the conventional meaning in that their fire needs two conditions to grow. So it needs flammable real estate and it needs oxygen. So if you have some demagogue and some babbling idiot with a fancy title behind his or her name, and you're giving them this oxygen vis-a-vis this airtime, then the real estate, one of many media platforms, then what's being created is an opportunity for these very bad ideas to spread among gullible and vulnerable people. I think maybe there's a happy medium in covering people like this. Maybe that happy medium is methodically limiting how much coverage they'll be given while, their lies and inaccuracies are framed with facts and actual data, but giving unlimited and unfiltered coverage of some of these clowns and sock puppets, as we have witnessed in the last several years, I just don't think that's really the way to go. On a similar note, I don't understand what the value is in having interviews with, some of these guests who almost repeat the same talking points verbatim. Maybe the obvious answer is ratings and money. Maybe there's an argument that can be made that people both on the right and the left are guilty of this. Now, I could be biased in my own personal view, but I do feel like people on the right predictably repeat the same talking points and the same phrases. And after 500 or 600 times of hearing the same lines, the shit gets really stale. You can almost, play right-wing bingo based on these, very common spills like, oh, Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Climate change isn't real. We're protecting our Second Amendment right. And what about Hillary Clinton's emails? It's like hearing some shitty Pandora playlists on loop. Now, why do we need to hear these same talking points and the same language from the same people over and over again? I don't know. But why not challenge these people to get out of the usual talking points and cite actual facts and actual data? Isn't it better to meet evasive responses with pointed follow-up questions versus allowing guests to comfortably recycle the same talking points? So here's an example, statement, you're fake news. Answer, I've just given you data and facts from, let's say, the World Bank, the CDC, or the World Health Organization. What's fake about the data that I've given you from those legitimate and respected sources? But instead, too often, I feel like some journalists just get steamrolled with this whole stale game, and it gives the appearance that logical people are being bullied and steamrolled by the irrational, which makes me tune out and avoid this type of coverage. This shit is not fun. So I want to reiterate that I do think there is great journalism out there. I respect a lot of outfits, but I wonder if journalism suffers from some of the same problems Democrats have, or liberals, in being too nice and unimaginative and not ready for what's coming after January 2021. My feeling is that Trump and all his enablers and the far right are not going anywhere soon. And say what you want about them, I've said it before, the right is very disciplined in their stupidity and their evil. Their corruption and ruthlessness knows no boundaries. And I hope I'm wrong about all of this. I do see how crucial the media's role is in honestly keeping the nation informed and accountable. I just like to see more of the fight and the creativity in eliminating this swelling misinformation and this gameship, or I should say gamesmanship. So there you have it.